What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats in another movement skill short story this week for week 11 of the 2025 NFL season. And on today's play, we're going to look at a gotta have it moment with the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. Their season essentially hanging in the balance, them reaching well into their bag, particularly Todd Monken, offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, reaching into his strategic tactical play calling bag in this big moment under pressure, anxiety, and fatigue with one of the game's most skillful movers. In fact, my reigning mover of the year, Lamar Jackson, under center, but lined up in a totally different place as they lined up with Mark Andrews, their tight end, doing the tush push. And as you can see here, and we're not necessarily going to get into the play as much as we typically would, diving into what each player is attuned to and adaptable around to try to investigate the problem and solution dynamics in their changing states of organization. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about from the book Enhancing Skill in American Football right there, just released back in September, myself, Tyler Yearby, and Rob Gray. And what we talk about when we think about qualities and characteristics of dexterity or the most skillful and dexterous movers. But let's look at this play so we can use it as a kind of a calling card or a point of illustration. It's not going to look like a lot, but it is on 4th and 1, less than 3 minutes to go in this respective game tied at 16 in Cleveland for the Ravens, who are trying to make it 4 wins in a row. Again, doesn't look like a lot here, but it is. And that which what it represents is a learning lesson for those skill acquisition specialists, those coaching practitioners, those football support staffs across a wide variety of timescales and levels. Okay. So again, we're not going to talk about attunement and adaptability, but what we're going to talk about here today is something we can learn from. Again, remember I mentioned Enhancing Skill in American Football. If you have the book, go to page 57, chapter 2, Qualities and Characteristics of Dexterous Movers. We talk about abundance and degeneracy being one of those categories. Turn the next page, we talk about awareness and attunement being one of those qualities and characteristics, or two of those qualities and characteristics. Thirdly, aptitude and instinctiveness. And again, I want you to think about how each one of these kind of factors and plays into. And then finally, and most importantly on today's play, authenticity and creativity. When we think about the meeting of tactics and techniques, or between a knowledge about and around versus a knowledge in and within, or a knowledge of, in the meeting of those ideas, oftentimes we have football coaches who are thinking that they are puppeteers out there just doing this, making players dance where they need to go, moving chess pieces in this way. But I myself feel as though we just simply need to put players in more of these types of positions through the tactics and strategies that we employ in a game situation under pressure, anxiety, fatigue, and the changing conditions of the game, so the players can go solve problems when and where it counts because they're the ones on the field. So, what might we be able to learn from what Todd Monken did here in this gotta have it moment? Taking the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands, my 2024 mover of the year, taking it out of his hands, putting it in his tight end's hands, and allowing his tight end to go make a play on 4th and 1. Well, I think it tells us something, not only as far as being deceptive and creative, sort of the art of war, if you will, but also this creativity and authenticity for the movers themselves. I believe that in practice and in training for players at all positions, whether it's Mark Andrews and our tight end, who typically isn't accustomed to getting the ball on a handoff, or whether it's an offensive lineman or a defensive player, or anybody who is being asked to do something they don't frequently do in practice and in the learning environment, we should allow them to have opportunities with the ball in their hands, say, for example, in this case, right? and a ball in their hand, in Mark Andrews' case, in a totally different way, because you never know when it is that we're going to lean on it. So, this creativity, this deceptiveness, this authenticity, if you will, can actually be the feeder, in my mind, to adaptability and dexterity, the ability to solve any emerging movement problem across situations and across conditions. So, in practice, giving a time period where we can play and explore, giving a time practice period, 10, 15 minutes, even during the course of the season, where we put the ball in the tight end's hands and tell him to go make a play. Did he need to rely on that in this situation? No. But if he wasn't trusted to do that because of the way that they had practiced it prior to that point, it's highly unlikely that Todd Monken in this gotta have it 4th and 1 moment less than 3 minutes ago in what is now the biggest game of their season, as they are in a must-win situation because of the hole they immediately dug themselves in. That we want to give those players the trust in themselves and their own movement capabilities. And in that, if we're a position coach or a coordinator, we can begin to have trust in how they solve problems in these situations as well. So, having practice periods where they explore a current solution, a current strategy, a current tactic, such as the tush push. Mark Andrews lined up in the tush push, and asking the players themselves, what else do you guys think we could do here? Can we do something unorthodox? Can we do something creative? Can we do something we've never done before? Something new and novel for us that might just work when it matters most. And I think the more that we implore players with the opportunity to be immersed in these types of environments and situations, we might find that they come up with strategies and solutions that work in the brightest of lights, in the biggest of moments that we can then rely upon. So, by giving more periods like that, and I would implore you to find your ways of doing that, we talk about a number of them in Enhancing Skill in American Football. What we can do as coaches to set the canvas for their problem solving. So hopefully some of that makes some sense. It's a little different movement skill short story than what we've had in the previous few weeks, where we really dive into a practice activity design. This is a bigger, global, overarching idea for our practice, training, and learning environments that I think we all need to learn a lesson from. So for another movement skill short story, this is Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi. I will talk to you all next time.